Okay, recently we uploaded a video on the fly miracle. Not too long ago, Brother Yahya uploaded this. A Christian missionary put forward a rebuttal, so we're going to head straight to that video and do a counter rebuttal to his video. So we'll go through YouTube and straight to his video, and we will then extract the video and refute him. So let's go to it right now. And just before we start, I'll put a description of the link below where there's a miracle mentioned in the Prophet's hadith. And in this hadith, it speaks about the fly and the surface of the fly having a particular antidote. And of course, it refutes the Christian missionaries who claim that, they make a mockery of the Prophet where the fly drops into your water, and the Prophet obviously in that particular time, because water was scarce and it wasn't always available, so water was something that was very valued, especially in the desert. So the Prophet mentioned through the miracle of Allah giving him that revelation that, hey, you don't have to just simply throw out a fly. The fly also has an antidote on one of those wings. That right there has been proven by scientists. And of course, the paper is there. And you can watch Brother Yahya's video on it. I'll put a link and you can see a description in that. Now, what this Christian missionary called Sah al-Nom, I believe that's his name, we'll go through his video. He tries to do a rebuttal. He misconstrues the scientific paper, and we shall debunk him on his point. So let's go ahead and listen to see what he has to say. Okay, so he shows the scientific paper. He's showing exactly what Brother Yahya is showing on his paper. Okay, and we'll pause it there. What it says is the antibiotic material is extracted by drowning the flies in ethanol, then running the mixture through a filter to obtain the crude extract. When this was placed in a solution with various bacteria, including E. coli and things like that. I'm not going to go through the whole list. It says that we are now trying to identify the specific antibacterial compounds, says Mrs. Clark. And that's basically what happened in the scientific report. And then he goes on to say, look what it is saying at the bottom. Okay, let's go through the bottom. Okay, yep. And then he goes on to the hadith that says, the Prophet said, if a housefly falls in the drink of any of you, if the housefly falls in the drink of any of you, he should dip it in the drink, for one of its wings has a disease and the other has a cure for disease. Now compare those two statements. Sure, we can compare them. Muhammad, if you see a fly in your drink, dip it and drink it. Okay. Drowning flies in ethanol, running the mixture through a filter to obtain the crude extract, placed in solution with various bacteria, including E. coli, golden sarge, candida, and hospital pathogen. Yep. And the issue is... and nowhere does it mention the wings. Okay, so here is his issue. Because the scientific paper did not mention where the actual antidote is and where the pathogens are, which is the bacteria, he's now concluding that the hadith is actually mistaken, which is it's wrong, because the hadith is specific in mentioning the location of the antidote on one wing and the pathogens on the other wing. But did you know that 90% of the surface of the fly consists of wings? Okay? And the scientific report does not suggest or tell us exactly the location of where this was extracted. Okay? So for you to say that it contradicts the hadith, you're making a mistake, because the only way you can actually testify to that, if the scientific report gives us that information. Now, the scientific report is only new. Maybe in the future, it will give us a more detailed report of where that extraction comes from. But for you to criticize that the hadith got it wrong is actually dishonest. And to be fair, that the hadith at least got the first part right, meaning that it at least has an antidote. And how did the Prophet Muhammad know that 1400 odd years ago? So the science actually tells that, but because the science doesn't disclose exactly the location of where the pathogens are found and where the antidote is extracted, you're actually making the conclusion and the assumption that the hadith got it wrong, when the hadith actually got it right by at least testifying that it has an antidote. And just because the science hasn't confirmed exactly the rest of the hadith, you can't therefore jump on your bandwagon and discredit the hadith. You see, unless you can show us specifically in the scientific report that the antidote is not found on the wing, or it's not extracted on that particular wing, but it's extracted from, let's say, the legs, for example, or just the head, for example, then you may have a case and we'll take down the video. That's no problem. But for you to conclude, just because the science hasn't mentioned in greater detail of where those pathogens and the antidote is found, then I think it's quite desperate for you to suggest that it's the Prophet's hadith is actually contradicting the science. So I think you're actually being desperate here, really, really desperate. And you know, other people are making other claims and saying things like, you know, and in his video he continues, and we can actually see. Look what else he goes on to say. He goes on to say how, flies spread diseases. Well, duh, of course they do. But you see, he's going to go now show how, flies are really dirty. Flies, they spread E. coli and they spread all these diseases and so forth. Well, just because a hadith said it cures a disease, it doesn't mean the hadith says it cures all diseases, all right? So basically, you're asserting, making the assumption that because the Prophet said dip the fly into the drink, you're now assuming what? It cures AIDS as well? Or maybe cancer as well? That's ludicrous. If the Prophet said it has a cure for a disease, it's probably speaking for a specific type of disease, like the one mentioned by the scientific report, right? So it doesn't mean that it cures all diseases. That's the assumption that you're making. Okay, so I guess that's pretty much enough of his video. And, desperate Christian gets refuted. Use some intellectual honesty for a change. Don't misrepresent the scientific statements to justify that the hadith is wrong. The hadith is not wrong unless you can actually provide a specific scientific statement that excludes the wings and so forth, right? Or actually specifies it. Until you do, the miracle is still there. The Prophet still said it has an antidote. Now you need to work that out and refute it. Maybe like I said, if a new scientific paper comes out, gives us more detail of exactly where it's extracted from, then, maybe we need to wait for that. But for you to conclude and say there's a contradiction, yet you haven't specified it within the scientific paper, is pretty inconsistent, hypocritical, and dishonest. Thank you.